Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Slow Flower Show with Deborah Prinzing. And I'm delighted today to welcome Jennifer Reed of Jennifer Designs. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. Thanks for
Thanks for
having me.
you bet. Thanks for joining me. I really am delighted that we could squeeze you in before Valentine's Day and all your spring things, which we'll talk about. Jennifer is a longtime Slow Flowers member, a floral designer, and based in Mullica Hills, New Jersey. Did I say that right?
You did.
Oh, great. So we've got a lot we want to talk about, but I want to start by just asking you to give me a snapshot of your business. You're a studio-based designer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
but you're
I basically have done it all, but this is where I live now, right in my house, in the studio. This is where everything happens. Grew up in a flower shop, so I knew kind of like what that was like. And then when I decided to kind of branch off, when I was in college, I decided to open up my own flower shop, retail shop too. But mine was
really
different because I was 22. I can do everything better than my parents. So I opened up a flower shop, but mine was going to be different because I was only doing events. So, which was a little different back then. That
so
wasn't really like a no.
you didn't have like walk-in customers necessarily.
I eventually did because the bills kept growing.
Yeah.
And I was new. I didn't even I didn't even do it in my own area. I went like almost 45 minutes away from where I live too, to a little bit more of a commercial area. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to do events. And I grew up and I basically got out of college as fast as I could with an art degree because I was like,
Hmm.
I can't make money doing this, so I'm just going to do this. So I was like, I'll paint in the back and I'll do some flowers on the side. It'll be wonderful. I'll listen to music. It'll be great. Until I started getting very, very busy.
Yeah.
So, which was
Wow.
great, right? But I was so young and I was up to like 50, 60 weddings a year because I just was like a hustler and I was young too.
Wow. It's
So
so
that's when,
amazing.
yeah, I mean, I did it pretty quickly. It was hard because growing up in the business, you know, and I doing everything myself too. I wasn't really 100% sure what I was doing, but you kind of learn as you go. But
Right.
it worked out pretty well until I got completely burnt out.
Yeah.
So,
So
but I still,
what was that span of time? That span of time when from age 22 to like what in 5 years you were just
7
exhausted?
years I stayed there. I stayed there for 7 years. Yeah.
Wow.
And I did pretty well. I had a great business until I decided that I wanted to have a family.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and then my ambitions kind of changed a little bit. I was like, oh, I want to make babies instead of flower arrangements now. So,
Yeah.
but that's when I decided I was like, oh, I can do a couple of weddings just like out of my house. So I went down to like 15, 20 while being, raising my girls.
Yeah. You have 2 daughters, right?
I have two daughters. Yeah.
And are they school aged or are they a little older now?
They are 16, well, soon to be 16 and soon to be 14. So 13.
Okay. Yeah.
And
It's a
they're my workers now.
That's great. I was gonna say it's a different kind of crazy than when you have toddlers, but
Oh yeah, it was definitely different. They were so used to, because from being at my dad's shop, because I would always help him, and then I would do my weddings on the side out of his shop and my garage, and I still kind of made it look like it was, and this was before social media. Really, I mean, there was
right.
social media, but not any that I belonged to at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Um, but it was interesting. I'm always in awe of the people now that are young with the kids, and they got the social, the Instagrams going, and I'm like, wow, I don't know how they do it.
But how sweet in a way that your daughters kind of had the same type of childhood as you did growing up with a florist parent. I mean, your parents had a retail flower shop and you said your dad's still doing Valentine's Day?
Yes.
Well, what's that shop name?
It's Lavender and Lace, and that's in Mantua, New Jersey, which is like 15 minutes from me.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean,
mm.
it's a shame. Everyone, like, if I get asked another time, like, why aren't you taking his shop over? Why aren't you, it's hard because I've been there, I've done that, I've seen it. I also made a choice by doing events. I know what my schedule is with my family.
Yeah, you
You
control
know,
it.
yeah, I remember just being little and every time seeing like a group of people coming into the shop, like we were getting ready to clean up, right? Like, yeah, the weekend's finally here, and being like, great,
Yeah.
a funeral's coming in. There's my weekend.
Right. Right. I think that's
Flowers were
really
not a happy thing for me, like growing up. They were not at all.
they
And I'm
were
sure
they were
my
your
kids too.
competition for your parents' attention.
Oh, yes, yes. So, Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was basically growing up, and now I'm with my kids. At least they know their roles. Like, when I roll in on, at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night, they know they have a truck to help me clean up in the morning. So they know there's buckets that need to be washed.
Yeah.
Now,
But
I mean,
they
now they prep things for me. Now I'm putting them on my roster of who's working for me too. Now that they're a
wow.
little bit older.
But they wanna make the money probably.
Oh
So
yeah,
how
yeah,
nice is that?
I know.
Well, let's pop up your website really quickly. I want to share it just a little bit with people so they can see a little bit about Jennifer Designs and the way the website is set up. You basically, it's sort of wedding focused and event focused, I would imagine, because you're offering people a lot of ways to check their date, check their wedding request. But this project request form that is for special events, right?
Yeah, basically because now I do a little bit more different out of the box things. So I need
Hmm.
to kind of put a tab on there for the people that just want random projects that don't fit in the realm of an event or
Sure.
or something like that.
Yeah, your aesthetic is so lush and romantic. It really, but there's a little bit of a casualness to it. Like it's not super formal. How do you describe your aesthetic? I shouldn't try to put words in your mouth.
I mean, I guess I mean, I never really tried to, so I guess I'll go with that now, what you said.
Well,
I
there's
mean,
I see a lot of whimsy. There's like not a lot of pave tight arrangements, and there's a lot of wispiness, and I think that's really
yeah, I mean, I do think it's a lot like my personality too. I can kind of go one way or the other. I tend to be a little bit, laid back and casual about certain things. I also think having been in the business, because now this is my 21st year of having my business and being grown up
wow.
in our shop too, I get to bring in the fact of the people that I learned from originally, like I helped out with a lot of people and all of the AIFD members who, kind of taught a certain way. And, these are the rules, these are the standards and things like that. So I'm able to take that and then grew from that as well. So
Ugh,
I know the basics
yep.
and I'm able to kind of break the rules where I see fit as well.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, that's nice. I know that there are some people that get very stuck, like, this is how I design, you know, but I've always been told I design the way my client tells me
I love
to.
it. I love this headdress. What was this for? This piece?
So I have a friend, Paul Stankard, who is a very, very famous glass artist. He's got pieces like in the Louvre, and he's pretty amazing. And I don't know if there's a picture of it
Is
with
this
her
it?
holding. So I actually made a replica of my own. I kind of was inspired by. This was my first shoot I've actually did on my own, where I was like, he really inspires me, makes me
Oh,
want
wow.
designer. So I did my own, so actually, if you go over one more, right, that ball that's in her hand there, it's
Yes.
a
Is the
glass
piece.
orb. That's one of his pieces, and it inspired me to kind of like do this entire shoot. And he
Mm.
let me do it in his studio. He was so gracious, and yeah, it was
Oh,
beautiful. And he does a lot of things with roots. So if you go back over to that bouquet, I actually have the bouquet is in a root base, like a
yes,
bowl
I
plant.
see that. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, it
so
looks like amaryllis roots or
yes, it
something.
does. Yeah, so I basically took an amaryllis and used that as my armature. I just kind of like
Oh my
through
gosh.
that. So
Well, that's a perfect segue, I think, to talk about Botanical Couture, but I just have to pause and say, Jennifer, that original vision when you were 22 of the easel and the painting in the back of the studio, you're not quite doing all of that type of art, but you
yeah,
are doing art. And I love that you've stayed true to your your drive to create. I feel like that's really
yeah.
what makes you tick. I mean, yes,
Well,
you pay the
yes.
bills and you do the weddings, but you do other stuff too.
Well, I mean, honestly, it wasn't until I would say maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I was in this mechanical, like a robot design world where, you've got your recipes, you do it. And I was getting very jaded from the whole business. I went back to school, going to get my master's. I was like, I'm done with this. I'm over this. And then I got introduced to some flower friends. I call them my flower friends now. and her name is Sue Davis, and she invited me to a design workshop called Design Sanctuary.
Yes, I think I've met Sue before,
Yeah,
maybe at the Philadelphia Flower Show or
probably
something.
yes.
Yeah.
She's a dear friend of mine. Her and my friend Shannon Wellington, who is a coordinator of the event, um, basically opened my eyes to, because I was so used to, I hung out with the same people. It was like my dad and the same
The more
people in the
conventional
wholesale.
crowd. Yeah.
Yes. So and then when I saw all of these people having so much, not, I wouldn't say so much fun, let's not, but I saw all of these people, like cutting things down and like, and then them calling it foraging. I'm like, there's a name for that. I usually just go in my yard and I call it free stuff. Like,
Yeah.
but there's a
It was
name for
like
it.
this different way to
It
engage with
was.
flowers.
It really was, and everyone was just being so nice to each other, and it was community because it was very lonely. For
Yeah.
many years, I ran the business by myself. I mean, I technically still do. I have some really
Yeah.
great assistants, but I mean, it was for the first time I was like, wow, this is community. This is what it's like, and it was like, here's some flowers, make something, and I'm like, well, what are we gonna do with them afterwards? Should we save them? We might have a funeral later. Like there's so many like
You're so
questions.
pragmatic.
And I'm like, what are we doing with these? And then they're like, no, we're just making something. And I'm like, for what? What's the end to this? So I had to break that, and then and it was very powerful because it kind of gave me finally the permission to merge like the two lives for the first time,
Mm,
which was kind of crazy to have someone that I just met tell me, hey, just go make something, have
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, it kind of gave me the, I guess, the confidence to think I
Sure.
was an actual artist, because I mean, I think a lot of people struggled. Now people have no problem calling themselves a designer or an artist, right? But I feel like back then it was like, oh, I just do flowers.
Yeah.
I do flowers. And
Yeah.
it was always such a like a side thing. Like it wasn't anything important about me. Oh, kind of like I cut hair, and
Right.
what they do is amazing too. So,
Right. It's sort of like this limiting, diminishing bucket that floristry and floral design was kind of boxed in, and
yeah,
now you have this expressive life that is
yeah,
literally no boundaries. And when the work that you do, it's what
yeah,
comes out of your brain is mind-boggling, and it's
yeah.
so joyous, and I love to see
Yeah.
it.
It is really, really fun. And a lot of not so wonderful things came out of social media, but that's, I think, one of the best things that came out, that it allowed people a space to be able to like, like, look what I can do. This is
Right.
like, see what I can do. I can do more. And they were doing it for themselves, which eventually turns in for other people, but
Yeah.
mostly for themselves in the beginning. Like, I just want to create.
Well, you mentioned your community. I know one of your friends is Kelly Shore of Petals
Yeah.
by the Shore and the Floral Source, and Kelly
And I
has.
met Kelly at Design Sanctuary too. So
Oh, you did.
I met so many, and Kelly has taught me, as well as yourself, taught me so much about, like, I always did buy from my local growers, but not to think I could buy, keeping it an American grown, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
American grown flowers. So,
Yeah,
so that was a whole thing. Now, I mean, I feel like sometimes, like, I am like an ambassador for the both of you. I'm like, let me
you're all
tell you
in.
about my mission.
I love it. Well, I think what happened was Kelly participated as one of our invited designers to create Botanical Couture for American Flowers Week, maybe as early as, I want to say, maybe 2017. I think we did the peony shoot up in Alaska. And she must have told you about it, because the next thing I knew, you reached out, you joined Flowers, you reached out and said you were interested in doing a design. And of course, I know it was during COVID. You
Yeah.
probably had a little more time on your hands, but you designed a beautiful first ever, I don't know if it's fair to say drag look, but it sort of had a wonderful, talk about joy, a wonderful design in 2021. We called it Tammy Tulips. And then you designed just this past year. And so I wanted to put those images up on the screen, have you just talk a little bit about your process. I mean, this is selfish for me, but we're recruiting designers for this year's American Flowers Week. We've got a good small group, but I want to get a few more. And I thought if people sort of saw what you did and heard your thought process, it might be something that would inspire them. So I'm going to pop up just a little short PowerPoint deck of some of these images of the two looks that you've done. So this is, we called it this one Tammy Tulips, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It affectionately started getting known as that as the day went on, because the day was getting a little grueling for my poor model
Uh,
slash very
Tell
incredible.
us about how this came together. And your model is great.
Oh, Corey is amazing. He actually is a very talented designer. He works for Jeff Latham, so he is already pretty amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, when Kelly had asked me about it, because I had already done a couple previously.
For yourself, right? Or for other photo shoots?
I did it for so that workshop that we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about. They usually have me. I'm good at like getting very hyper focused on like little projects, and I feel
Got it.
like I think that's my strength. You know, I can do,
Details.
yeah, the details. I can really like. I mean, the one dress I did a few years ago, I pressed all of the flowers. You know, like I had like I was in it for the long haul. You know, so.
That is more than details. That's meticulous in that you had a vision and you knew how to get there and it wasn't rushed.
Yeah, well, I mean, those things are the things that really, the prepping of it and the excitement of it is honestly things that people don't really get to be a part of, but it's so important to me, you know. Everything has to have a rhyme or reason to it. Like even this shoot, like I kind of like looked at all the things that people have done in the past. They were gorgeous, and I was like, and the questions that I start to ask myself is, what don't I see?
Hmm.
And
Good point. Like
you know,
what can I make my own that no one else has really explored in terms of a look or also the type of flowers you use, right?
yeah, I mean, I think it's important to me to know if you put a lot of your time into these things. So if you're gonna do it, flowers are gorgeous, right? There's not much you can do wrong when you're talking about, taking beautiful flowers. So, I often tell people that I use Pinterest in a different way. I kind of go on Pinterest to see if I can't find the thing that I'm
Hmm.
looking for, you know, um,
Interesting. That's such a good tip.
like
Yeah.
because it's kind of like, well, that means that there's this hole, right? There's this like need for it to be created, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it'll just go into maybe there's a reason why it wasn't created, but
But you're asking that question about maybe where's the opportunity for you?
yeah, I mean, I get excited with when I can't find the things I'm looking for, which is kind of crazy. It forces me to like really start sketching, start gathering information. I turn into a little bit of a crazy person for a little bit until it finally comes together. But with Tammy Tulips, as soon as I realized that I wanted to do, a male, as a drag queen, I knew instantly who I wanted. I was hoping he was going to do it. I also kind of like am obsessed with Diane Keaton. I don't know why.
Oh, with the white shirt,
Yeah,
right?
I was like, I love that look. I love the simplicity of it. I just like, I think it'll work out. It'll show off her necklace. I also knew that like Corey loved plants. Like he was a huge plant enthusiast. So I wanted this character. Basically, it had to be a character for me. Like it can't just be, a thing.
You had a
So
little story. You had a little story about your
yeah,
character.
yeah, so hence why we have the watering can and the props. And it also is good. It gives everybody that helps me out too with things, tasks, so they feel like they're part of the role too. Like the one of the designers that helped, her name is Katie Winter. She, got her grandmother's antique gardening books involved. I let her take care of like we designed like the jewelry, and I let her to really focus on that so she could call it hers too, basically, which is important to me. Like when people are
Mm.
helping me to be able to be like, I did that, this was, um,
So let me stop and ask you about that. The necklace that is, kind of reminiscent of strings of pearls, is that made with botanicals?
yeah, that's hyacinth.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the things you don't even realize that, but
Mhm.
also too, that's one of my favorite things too. Like you wouldn't even know that that was, all of that kind of like put on there,
Right.
um, and her hat, obviously, but and she's got about 350 tulips on there.
Oh my gosh.
And it was very, very heavy, but I had like a whole mechanism to kind of, basically work it so the weight was distributed on her properly.
I think, yeah,
Uh,
let's talk about that a little bit. You engineered this skirt, right? You did have some kind of like almost like suspenders or something
yeah, I did
underneath the
like
shirt?
suspenders. Yeah, I think that people forget about that part. And I mean, I guess I had the hand up to be able to look at some of the things that were done, and and what other people have done, for other things. And I've always noticed how they pull a lot, because of
Mhm.
the weight. So I'm
Yes.
trying to figure out how to, and that's also being prepared too. Like
Mhm.
this isn't something that like the morning of or the day, the day before. This was something that like I was working on like weeks before. Okay, how is this going to hold up? How are we going to do this? My mom
Right.
like sewed like belts on things, so it was adjustable. Like it's like a whole family affair with everything that I do.
Oh, Jennifer.
Um,
Well, that it really shows in the kind of polish of this. Whereas, we sometimes have really fun ideas that maybe have quite not executed how the designer originally envisioned it. And I think you're right. If you prepare and maybe make samples or try out the technology part ahead of time, the flowers kind of do their thing, but you've got to be prepared to support them.
yeah. And that's also too, there's more people doing it now. So
Hmm.
all of those people that did it before were really the guinea pigs, right? They were trying, you're right. They were the
Yeah.
ones that like, and they were so brave to be able to do it, right? Like that's, it's an undertaking, So, we learned from everybody. That's why I can't stand when people really critique or knock anything too much.
Right.
Don't, because you
Right.
don't know when it was made. You don't know what budgets were made. You don't know what time of the year. It's like it's better just to keep your mouth shut and not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but
Well, I want this to be encouraging to people who are thinking about participating this year. So, um, your remarks are so inspiring, and just to hear you talk about, you know, being positive and having joy and having fun is it really comes through in this outfit. Talk just a little bit about attaching the flower. So when I'm thinking about, you described this one that you pressed everything, so it was very, very manageable. This is
yeah.
the opposite of that.
This is the opposite of it.
These
Yeah.
are full
This
flowers
is the
and they're heavy.
complete opposite of it. So obviously you need to, and I do not want to deter anybody because I was already I've been talking to a couple people trying to build up their confidence. I'm hoping that they do sign up to do this.
Oh, yay.
Um, it's basically time. Unfortunately, you can't rush things like this. It's got to be something that like you have to really want to do, and and you will be asked a million times like, what was it for? What did you do it for? And then you have to say, I did it for me. Like I did it
Yeah.
because I wanted to. I did it for to show off the beautiful American flowers. I did it, and it's always like, but why? But I think that if you can look down the road a little bit, I have been asked to and commissioned to make things,
Yes.
and if you don't make it first, one, you're not going to know how to do it, and two, how do you know that you're not really great at this, or like it's just no one's going to ask you to make something that they've never seen you do,
Jennifer,
right?
that's so well said.
So
I hadn't
yeah.
thought about that, but it kind of goes along the lines of, make the art you want to see in the world. And it's
Exactly.
back to you saying, what don't you see?
Hmm.
I really love that.
Yeah.
Oh, Jennifer,
but
fun.
it's but it's also you do have to like I wasn't obviously taught like many many years ago like oh like one day a customer is going to come in and ask for a full tulip skirt. Like I was never taught about that, so you have to go back to, and that's why it is important to really, and I am a big believer that people should either go work in a retail shop for
Mm.
a year, or try to shadow somebody or something like that, just because of mechanics, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So every single one of those tulips were wired. So they
Down the
were wired
stem.
down. We hit like a certain point where like the hardiness of the stem that you really wouldn't see underneath some of the. We had
Got
to take
it.
some of the leaves, but a lot of them are just kind of like up maybe 2 to 3 inches from the base of them. Obviously, you have to be careful because they snap. Um, I decided to go downward with them, obviously because gravity, and that was the way I was able to start this the night before too. So
I mean, it looks like a beautiful floral patterned tapestry from the 1950s, that some, Hollywood model had or starlet would wear because of the composition of going from the white, cream, pale green, and yellow, and then flowing into the darker shades. It's just
Yeah.
like it's just a beautiful pattern.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was part of the whole, the look of the whole thing. I'm a little obsessed with sunset colors. Like I love,
Mm,
like no matter what, like I'm challenging myself for next year's, you know, uh, exhibits that I have to do to not
yes.
use these colors because I automatically want, like, I just light up with them. But definitely had an ombre kind of a vibe to it. I
Mhm.
wanted to also give the vision that if she was kind of like walking through a field, like what would that look like? So she would go through the tulips and she would go through, the hellebore. She would go through, like, it wasn't this, and when you go to through a tulip field, it's usually all the same shade. It's
Yes,
not,
blocks of
you know.
color.
So that was supposed to be like in my original vision board, which I didn't show to you. It was almost like a tulip field, you
So
know.
is there a base, like a fabric skirt or chicken wire? What did you attach the tulips
Um,
and there's other flowers in there too. I even see bougainvillea, I think.
Yeah, oh, the bougainvillea so I went over to my local garden center. He has such a stash of random plants, and he always has so much bougainvillea. So I was able to like cut up tons of plants of it.
Oh my
I wanted
gosh.
that coral in there. So
That's right, because you did it kind of in mid-spring, so you wouldn't have found it in
yeah,
anywhere else but a garden
yeah.
center.
It was like right around yeah, it was like March or April that we did that.
Yes, I
So the
remember
only
that.
thing my friend Cassie from Jigbee Flower Farm. She
Yes.
provided all of the tulips, and there's also like narcissus in there. There's daffodils in there, hellebore. There's little tiny little pansies too. So it's like definitely an ode to the spring.
Mm,
So
mm.
it was pretty beautiful. But I used a almost like a reinforced ribbon mechanic with wire.
Okay.
So I kind of like gridded it with wire, and then I kind of went up and reinforced it with some of the double face satin because that's
So you had
the
something to attach the flowers to.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I needed something that kind of went on there. And then and another thing too is you have to almost assume that your mechanics are going to show, right?
Mm,
Don't
mhm.
like wait for the problem to fix it. My theory is always like just assume that something's going to fall off or whatever. So all of the ribbon and the mechanics were covered with moss on top of it so that it wasn't like, was it an unnecessary thing? Maybe not, maybe. I have no idea. We'll never know. But that
Yeah.
way, if she swayed, because all the things that I try to make are wearable. Like you can actually wear them and move around and dance and all that stuff. When she swayed, like if any of it was showing or whatever, and to ruin the shot would be, just for that one little thing.
Well,
Even though
here's
she's
here's
having
the sway shot on the right. There's a little bit of movement in there. That's the other thing, Jennifer. This was like a full 360. It wasn't just let's do the front and shoot it. You
yeah,
made this completely ready to walk out and go to a ball, go to a dance or a picnic or a summer tea. Or I love it. It's so
yeah.
great.
Yeah, she wasn't going anywhere far. That was pretty heavy, but and then I put her in like 4-inch heels.
Right. Well, the styling is amazing. The frames, the jewelry, the hat, the watering cans. You had gloves. You had those green suede heels, 5-inch or more. I mean, Corey did a wonderful
He
job.
really did. He still
Um,
has them. He like it's his little memory of the day.
well, you couldn't keep them. They probably were not quite your
Oh
size.
yeah, they weren't my size.
When we published this in the summer issue, the Botanical Couture issue of Slow Flowers Journal, and this is how Robin, our art director, designed the layout. She really liked all these flat laid details that were kind of like what you'd see. I mean, a lot of people do that for wedding shoots, right? Like
Yeah.
the one on the lower left with the gloves and the tool and the old vintage gardening book. I just thought it was just perfect, everything about it.
Well, that was all Hallie. That's why I asked the photographer that I asked too, because the attention to detail, and also too, like if you're going to invite someone to help you and volunteer their time and things like that, you should give them a space to be able to like, what can you have fun with? Like, do you want
Mm.
some extra flowers? Do you want this? Like, what do you see with it? I think you can't be so close-minded, especially when you start asking people to be a part of your vision too.
Yeah.
They obviously have to be respectful of that, but you do have to understand, like, you're asking them, they have something to offer themselves as well.
Right, and I'm sure you've been invited to do other styled shoots with teams of people, and sometimes they're super rewarding, and other times you're like, "Why did I do that?" And maybe not. I've heard that from other people though. That
Yeah.
like every participant has to get something out of it.
Yes. And I mean,
Um,
even the makeup and hair artist. I mean, all I did was send her a couple of ideas. I didn't micromanage her. It was her idea to make her hair pink too, which I would not. That wouldn't have been my first
it's
choice.
outrageous. It's
But
just
she was
outrageous. I
like, "Do
love
you
it.
like this?" I was like, "She's like, I'd really like to use it." And I was like, "If you can make it work, I am down for it." Like, like when it comes to like fashion and stuff like that, I am not like the leader of that. So you know more I know. But she really brought it to life. That's why I think it's just really fun to like work with other people. And this is
Yeah.
not. And when it was all done, like I was like I cried a little bit. And I'm not really that kind of a person, but I was like, oh my gosh, like it really looked like my vision board. It looked like how I wanted it to come together. So
I'm so glad. Well, you had a few years to recover, and then last year you blew us away with another Botanical Couture celebration, and I'm just going to pop some of those images up. This was your mood board, which you sent me, which was helpful because I think I want to show this because um, back to you commenting, Jennifer, about just time. Like you had to sort of sit with this for a while to figure out what were the silhouettes, what were the flowers, what were the details you wanted to feature. So you have this model dressed as an Italian sculpture. Where did that come from?
um so I kind of like keep like a little bit like of a notebook of these crazy ideas like that like I hope to revisit one day, so this was one that I kind of always wanted to do. So when the opportunity arose, because I met some great people over at a gorgeous estate.
Yeah,
And
let's put that up here for a minute.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Now it speaks for itself.
yes. And like, how could you not want to do something like, I mean, obviously a beautiful girl in a dress, or a guy in a dress or whatever, anybody in a
Right.
dress, would look amazing there, right? The site is amazing, but what can you do that isn't competing with it? And also like what would even make sense there, right? Just someone
Yeah.
in a ball gown or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
It's amazing. So
yeah,
this is a sort of hidden garden, private estate near where you live that you knew some folks who gave you permission to shoot here, right?
yes. It's owned by the DuPonts. It's one of their first properties, and I was fortunate enough to be able to have full range of it that day. So it was pretty amazing. So the the idea came from just wanting to have this kind of like a Victorian type of a lady. But also, I wanted to play ode to all of the statues and things that were on the grounds and
Oh,
things.
yeah. It's amazing.
So it was kind of like, how do you like really marry the two? And I've been wanting to do things with like a lot of white as well. So, and
I
also,
I have to just comment and say that when I looked at that just previous photo and how green, that whole landscape is, it makes so much sense that you chose this sort of creamy white blush palette because, the green really just is this beautiful, lush backdrop, and there's no competition from
yeah.
anything else blooming. It's all foliage.
Well, I mean, obviously it worked out, but also too, you do have to keep in mind, when you do decide to do something like this. All right, what is available?
Mm.
What type of flowers, when you're partnering with the farm, what can you ask a lot of them from, right? So you have to kind of do your research with that too. You can't just be like, I want, 'cause when did I do this in May or
Yeah.
like that. I can't say to my peony grower, can I have, 400, Sandra Bernhardt's, like you can't just demand
Right.
whatever. So it
Well,
was,
and you mentioned with the tulips that, Cassie from Jigbee provided the tulips, and she's a Slow Flowers member, and she was local at the time, but you had a local peony grower that you had been buying from, and that's the relationship you
yeah.
developed, right?
Oh yeah, the same thing with Cassie. I was already buying from Cassie, so that was an easy one. And I also asked her, what things would you like to see? What are you going to have an abundance of? Like
Mhm.
it wasn't like I was kind of like demanding or whatever. Like, because you do have to when you're working with your farms in general,
Yeah.
right? You have to be a little bit more considerate with that. I mean, even when I'm doing events, I'll send my mood board over to my flower farmer, and I'll let her basically dictate what she's sending to
Mm.
me. You
Right.
it just because like I know what it's like on my end,
Yeah.
so it's just easier for her to be like, oh great, I know that I can grab these colors and she can match it. And I love that part of it. So the same goes with this too. Like I was already buying from Partha, so it was like it was Outlet Farms. It was an easy kind of like, okay, what are you going to have? And he showed me a couple of things, and I was like, I don't know about that, But when I saw this, I was like, this could work, especially with the statue, because originally at that idea it was going to be a statue with a colorful dress, and and then
Really?
you do a couple of things, and you're like, no, 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 this a statue's got to be all the same, right? This is a statue. So
Right, and
it's all
so
trial and error,
there
you have to.
yeah, there's more than one variety of peonies in here, but right? It seems like it,
Yeah,
or
there's
they're just kind of tonal?
yeah, no, it's two different varieties. I wish I could recall off the top of my head.
That's okay.
I know Bowl of Cream is one of them.
Sure.
And I believe the other one, it would just be me guessing, but
Yeah,
Bowl of
yeah,
Cream is definitely one of
yeah.
them. One has a little bit of that pink hue, which I actually ended up liking a lot. And I was a
Mhm.
little nervous in the beginning, but then I think it kind of set it off to make it look a little bit more dimensional. And then he also had some gorgeous sweet pea, which I didn't even anticipate putting sweet pea in the design.
Oh, right, we see the little details, and also did is the sweet pea in the neck piece and the headpiece?
Yeah, the sweet peas in the neck piece and almost all in the head piece.
There we
And
go, that shows it.
yeah, and then Milano Farms was kind enough to donate some of the pieces to the front, which were like the larkspur and the white delphinium,
Oh, kind of under the underskirt in the
the
front.
underskirt of
Yeah.
it, which was in the beginning, like I wasn't really sure what I was doing with that, but I do know the same thing, working out the basically the mechanics of it. You know, these the stress is going to want to part. When it parts, what are you going to see? Unless it looks like this, round around it. So I was much
Well
smarter with this design than I was with the last one, at least on her hips. So
well, you know what, I'm remembering the story of this, and we will add the link to the full story that ran in, Slow Flowers Journal where you describe this, mechanic. So people can click that and find that in our show notes at slowflowerspodcast.com, but it was ingenious. You basically created panels for the skirt, and so that you weren't having to you gave movement and access for the model to be able to walk, right?
yeah, they're on individual plastic. I don't know. I found it. I don't know where I found it from, but I was like, oh, it has holes and it's plastic and it's white. It's all the things that I like.
The base.
It's not gonna hurt my hands. It's not. I don't have to paint it. I can take it apart and reuse it because I reuse every single mechanic I ever buy. I reuse it. So it was the easiest thing I could think of. But every single peony is kind of laid flat in, so that way there was no droopiness of it too, which was nice. And then I basically duct taped
Right.
every single head to the
So
back.
the stem went through the hole
Went through the hole, and then I
and
duct taped the opposite side of it. Like I cut a hole in the duct tape and kind
yeah,
of sandwiched it every
wow,
single one of
geez.
them.
400 peonies.
But I had to though. Like I mean,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then on the
that's why it's so full looking. I mean, there is no gravity problem the way you engineered this.
yeah, and so on those panels too, we attached zip tie holders so that we could grab it on both sides. So it wasn't so it wasn't so heavy to be able for her to walk. Also, we weren't damaging it every time we picked it up. We had our holders. We could put it around our wrists. We could walk with her. So
Mm,
three people walked with her.
Mm,
the
I love it.
entire time. But actually, four people because we had four panels. I mean, I gotta say, it's probably the most fun, things that I do is trying to figure things out. Like it's just because there's so many ways of going about it, and I think the most fun is when it's all done where you started and where you began. Like that journey is just like,
Oh,
gosh, and looking back on your things, and you're like, wow, it was gonna look like this, and look what it came out.
well, and back to the fact that this is a team. I remember you saying that like there was this table in this vignette, and you invited a friend to kind of style it for you to kind of complete the story of your statuette of your lady who was frozen in time at this Renaissance garden.
Yeah, I mean, I said to her, I was like, because we went over there earlier, and I was like, this looks just like up her alley, and she's
Mm.
all up for trying different things, and she's a planner, and she brought like glasses of champagne, and she bought pastries. Like if a party just like if you woke up in the morning, this is the party that you found on on this table. And apparently, this woman had some amazing parties. The one that used to own this property, so especially in the 20s, like you knew that there was some fun to be had at the
Yes,
parties.
you're channeling those
Yeah.
flapper parties or those Gatsby parties.
Yeah.
So
And
fun.
then even the makeup artist, I used the same one for this one that I did with Tammy, and same thing. I kind of sent over a couple of mood boards. Like she had a great time painting her. Did not know how it was all gonna come together whatsoever.
Yes, you painted the model's hair as well, right?
Yeah, your hair
This
was
one on
painted.
the left shows her skin.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. It was all over. I mean, seeing the model get in the car afterwards, completely still with the makeup on, was hysterical. But um,
Oh my
it
goodness.
was it was a lot of fun. And Hallie Richter was the person that did the
Yes.
photography for both of them, and she did such a beautiful job editing it too. Not because sometimes it can go south if you edit too much and you kind of blur things out. Like you can still see all the flowers beautifully. It was a wonderful day. Like, and they came out amazing.
And look how happy and refreshed you look, even though you probably had no sleep.
It was
Well,
I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty crazy. It was pretty
oh,
crazy. And then I had something like the next morning,
of course you did.
another random thing. But
Oh,
it
geez.
was it was it was totally worth it.
Well, we
And
just have
you never know. You might see me submit again, like I want to do it again because I'm crazy like that. But
well, secretly, I want you to not see something and know that it's calling that hole needs to be filled by Jennifer Reed. Just
yes.
a couple more photos, and then we'll get back to the big screen. But this was the image that ran on the cover of Slow Flowers Journal, which I thought was just so serene. Like you froze her in time, and then there we see the champagne and the grapes and the flowers, and
Yeah.
this beautiful expression. Robin sure had fun designing this, and then this was the opening spread. Again, we really see how the hair and those peonies work together on that headpiece on the right.
Oh yeah, the first picture up with her hands like that, like I when I saw her hands like that, it looked such like a statuesque kind of a pose. Like the model was amazing. Brooke was incredible. It was just it was like it's so nice to see an idea come to life, and you're like, "Oh, that's the one picture that like really did it for
Oh,
me."
I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, you
Oh yeah,
really
I love
captured it.
it.
Well,
if
that
if anybody gets anything out of this, I think that a lot of people can do this. I think it's the initial like, why would I be able to, what can I do it? But I think if you know your mechanics and you know clothes, most people wear clothes, that they can do it. Like and I I'm putting it out there on your podcast. Find me if you want encouragement. If you need a cheerleader, I will tell you you can do it.
don't call Jennifer in tears when you're halfway done. Plan
No,
ahead.
no. Don't call me like the morning of, but you know that I would answer.
That's awfully generous of
Yes.
you. And I just think just showing, and a couple people I'm talking with who are planning to create garments this year, I told them that this was coming up, and they're like, "Oh, great! Send me the link. I want to watch this whole conversation." And we also we did a podcast video last year with everybody who designed, and you were on for a short while, but I don't feel like we gave you a full conversation, which is why I wanted to do this today. But I'll share that too.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so before we wrap up, you've got something else that you really are known for now, and that is the Philadelphia Flower and Garden Show. And I wanted to, or I guess it's called the Philadelphia Flower Show, right? The garden
Yeah.
is, I'm adding that.
I mean, there's plenty of gardens there.
Yes, yeah.
It's definitely it's the largest show in the United States in
It
terms of the floral,
it
but
is
landscapes and
it's the
there's
Grand Dame.
and
Yes.
it's everything. It's got them all, and the floral is just the creme de la creme of it is seeing all the floral designers in their section.
So Jennifer, you've been partnering in various levels from originally speaking at the Philadelphia Flower Show maybe 6 or 7 years ago to now having a featured garden. And I just wanted to ask you to talk about it. And I'm going to put the concept for this year up on the screen because you've shared it on your website. So this year's show is in March. These folks can see the dates there, and the theme is United by Flowers, but this is your concept for your entire exhibition. It blew my mind when I saw this. So tell me about what you're going to do for this.
Well, it's a bit ambitious, I'm not going to lie, but it's a very large space that I was given this year. When I heard the theme, which is United by Flowers, and I am a very literal person. I like I like to take because I think that's how most people's brains work, right? Like
Right.
I think the average person, like they think of something and that's it, and that's what they want to see at a show, especially when you're having the masses there. But then I like to like take a deep dive from that idea and then go down. So the first thought that I kind of was thinking was, okay, United by Flowers, I'm thinking of the United States. I'm already, working with Kelly and yourself, like trying to promote American grown flowers, and it's not out of my reach at all. I am fortunate enough to be doing the something with the American grown this year as well too, which is
Yes.
a pretty big deal. So I was like, this is the perfect time if I'm going to do it, right? So
Right.
why not just do the entire United States? No big deal. So I thought, okay, well, that's fine. Let's do the United States, but how are we going to make it fun? So I was like, well, how about if everyone's going on a road trip?
Yes,
So
I see that. And this kind of backdrop kind of looks like a folded map in a way.
yeah, so
Love
it's going
that.
to be a very large uh, roadmap of the United States.
Wow.
So it's yeah,
Will
it's
you
very.
actually have a car in
Yes, and we
the
and we have a car that we're bringing in, and the idea is basically to have it kind of go from a two-dimensional map into a 3D, where you're kind of like entering the map as the viewer.
uh well, I
So
know you've done gardens in the past that people could walk through, right?
yes, so the only thing that we're doing with this one is you're going to be able to walk around it. I had big ideas, but there's so many people at the flower show, and
Mhm.
when it's too interactive, it kind of limits it for the people that can't interact,
Yeah.
and which is heartbreaking for me because I want them like in the car, like I want them like driving around,
Yeah.
but
But
um,
people will be taking a lot of photos from this perspective
yeah.
and, posing in front of it, I'm sure.
Yeah. So that's the idea. But then because I got such a large space, it's 360. So it wasn't
Oh.
originally supposed to, but they were like, oh, you know what? You got to do the back of it. I was like, oh, great. No big deal. Let's do it. No big deal. So
Can't you just put me next to a wall?
that's that's what I thought. But because like all things, everything is, you need to have your challenges, which kind of makes it a little interesting as long as you get a heads up. So the other side of it is going to be my interactive side because I can't not because it's something that I've kind of enjoy doing now. I like when people are a part of the design. I think that's what makes the show even more of a show when you get to actually be part of it. So the
Is that
backside, yeah, is going to be interactive with maps and road trips. I'm partnering with AAA too. Um,
is that this guy right here did something for you? I
oh yeah,
saw this
so
electronics here.
that's my friend James. So he is a very talented. I don't even know what you would even call him. What did I put on there? Fabricator of interactive digital experiences. So
Wow.
yeah, so last year I did an interactive brain that you could walk into. And when you
Yes.
went into the brain, I had buttons in there. And when you pushed buttons, it kind of educated you on which part of the brain you were using when you were doing certain things. Like,
I'm just gonna scroll down to that a little bit, but the cerebral garden
yeah.
was very much an experience where people could walk in, right?
Yeah, they could walk in there, and then we had button podiums, and like when you wrote, when you put the frontal lobe, for
Mhm.
instance, the frontal lobe lit up. So James basically had like a light kind of show on the frontal lobe. So it wasn't just, about, obviously pretty, but you were kind of learning, okay, when you did conceptual thinking, your frontal lobe was like, it kind of educated you in that way.
Oh my
And
god, Jennifer, this is insane.
and one of the best things about this exhibit too is it's now living in a elementary school. It was donated to a principal who is huge on getting children to understand how their brain works and their emotions and things like that.
Oh,
So
I
they,
love it.
yeah, they put it in their lobby as a learning center. So
So
that's my favorite part about the whole exhibit now. But
so this same, collaborator, this artist that you worked with, James, is going to, do this interactive page or
yeah,
the backside of the map, and AAA is involved set.
yeah. So AAA, I'm working with them. So I came up with this idea, like, what if there were just road trips that were designed that were just kind of like hitting botanical gardens, like for the people. I know there's tons of ones out there that are just,
Floral tourism,
yeah.
lady.
I know there's plenty that just do national parks and things like that. I was like,
Right.
are there any for the people that like to go hopping to different, and I'm fortunate being on the East Coast, having Longwood and
Oh
Chanticleer,
my gosh, right.
so it's in Winterthur. Like I've got so many in arboretums and things like that, and I have access to some really intelligent horticulture specialists too, which I'm very blessed
Yeah,
to.
but not everybody has those guys,
Oh
so
no.
that's what your map is gonna be.
Yeah, so it's gonna have, so they kind of arranged a couple of road trips for people like on the East Coast, the Midwest, California. Obviously can't do them all. I'm hoping, because I'm a very non-confrontational person, I'm hoping that I don't leave somebody out that like, I thought about
You
that a
know
million
what?
times, but I'm like,
It'll be inspiring.
yeah.
I'm so tempted to just use my miles and come out just to spend a day, experiencing this design.
Well, I'm one of many. There are several different amazing designers that are going to be there that I've had the pleasure of getting to know and working besides. It's a really cool experience because like it is a show, and there's like, and you get judged and all that stuff, but that is like the least on the totem pole, because
Right,
I just don't
right.
know how you really judge things like that in terms of art. Like
Yes.
it's everyone
You
has,
that can't be why you do it,
no,
but
not at all.
I also love that it sort of happens at a time of year where your season of wedding design is not really revving up yet, so it kind of you have some space to create this amazing installation and enjoy it before the craziness of wedding season, I
Yeah,
hope.
yeah. I mean, I start working on it in the summertime, and I go pretty steadily. Right before Christmas, we go pretty
All
crazy
in.
with it. So, and Valentine's Day is thrown in there too. But it's definitely a labor of love, because it's about like a month of your time when it's all said
Yeah,
and done. By the
yeah.
time you set up and then break it down, it's,
And the show itself is like 9 days,
yeah, the
right?
show's 10 days because they they
Okay.
they put the preview day in there too. They kind of make it like it's 9 days, but it's 10 days. So, and
Yeah.
you have to be smart.
Wow.
You have to be smart about mechanics. You have to be smart about like thinking through, like the same way with that dress. You have to take it to the macro and micro level on every little thing. Um, I think what I learned in the past too, I definitely do a lot of different things in my business. I'm not a purist. I'm not, and I don't claim to do all of the things, but I do my best with everything, like recycling everything. Um, Foam does not necessarily work with things like this. I've learned that, like, unless you have to really rethink everything. So I know people still use it, which is totally fine. The
Yeah.
only reason I'm not trying to use it this particular time is because um, just from last year, I just learned it just dries out too quickly. I need my flowers to
Mhm,
live. So
mhm.
everything is kind of like trying to figure out mechanics of buckets and cups and water tubes. And my Philly just came out there, my water tubes.
Water tubes, yeah. I
Definition
know about water ice,
definition
right?
water is water. When I was out in
My son went to college in Philadelphia. I know that
when I
it's
was out
coming
in
back to me.
California last year, I kept saying to people, "What are?" And they were like, "What is she saying?" So
Well, I'm so impressed, and I we could do a whole show on that. I mean, if I come out, we'll film something. But wow, my mind is blown, Jennifer. I mean, dresses seem when you say from macro to micro, the dress is like intense, but on a body. But the square footage of what you're undertaking at the flower show is I don't even know what the square footage is, but it's grown from what you did last year already.
yeah, I'm about
And
1,200 square feet right now.
wow, great. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations. This is all goes back to you just saying yes and being open to following all these opportunities and feeding your own inner muse and sharing it with others. So
Yeah,
I'm just
I mean, it is.
grateful.
I mean, saying yes is one thing, but I also think you just have to not let anything really discourage you. I think it's really hard because we want to go on the apps and things like that and see what everybody's doing, but kind of just like, bring it back to reality a little bit and do it for yourself. Because I have the pleasure of remembering what it was like being in business for so long. Like when the
Yeah.
only people that I really had to please was myself and the client,
Yeah.
and sometimes
Yeah.
myself was still the last on that thing.
Sometimes you just let that go.
Yeah, I would get out my disposable camera, maybe take a picture of it, but it wasn't, and it was
Yeah.
that's fleeting. It was about the memory, it was about the feeling. That's what it was like being a floral designer. So sometimes you do have to remember that that's really what you're doing it for, not, to feel like you're in some sort of I wouldn't say competition, but feeling like,
Yeah, but I know what you
you
mean.
know
It's
what I
not
mean? Like it's like
the
the
everything's
everything,
outward.
yeah, the everything is content kind of a life right now, which,
Yeah.
which is why I do love doing the flower show, because it's you get to actually see people interact with what you're doing. It's not
Yeah.
they're not
It's
pushing a button
rewarding.
and liking it or hearting it or sharing it. They're actually like, smiling and laughing and so that's why I encourage anybody to do things like that, so that people can
Mm,
interact with their, with people, with
mm.
what they do, and get the feedback that way sometimes.
Uh, well, Jennifer, thank you so much for giving us this wonderful journey, road trip through your business and your life. And I would just wish you a very successful 2024. I know we didn't even touch on everything you're doing, but thank you for sharing, especially about the Botanical Couture. I think that will inspire a lot of people. But teasing us about the Philadelphia Flower Show is amazing. So thanks so much. We'll share all of these resources in our show notes at slowflowerspodcast.com, and you can find and follow Jennifer, even though she says she's not a social media maven. She does post beautiful photos. Thanks so much.
Thank you.